yesterday, by the way, accused Republicans of trying to keep focus off of President Trump, whose name appears numerous times in so-called Epstein files. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Shari, civil rights attorney and nationally recognized legal analyst, back here on the Live Zone. Shari, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome back.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you for having me.
All right, so all eyes are on this deposition. This has clearly become a case of the blame game. Clintons, well, they say the focus should be on President Trump. Republicans say not so fast, and they are trying to point the finger at the Clintons. Meanwhile, the victims and survivors, well, they just want justice.
Exactly. And this is a lot of political theater. Secretary Clinton was deposed for 6 hours. She said many times, maybe 20 or 30 times, that she had never met Jeffrey Epstein, had never been on the island. And one of the things that's very sad about this is that the survivors have not been called to testify. They have not been called in front of Congress. They have not been called in front of the Department of Justice. So when you start to see this political wrangling between Republicans and Democrats, it really takes the focus off of these victims who were sex trafficked as children, possibly, who were sexually abused, tortured, and there's evidence now that some children may have even been murdered. So when I see the politicians doing this, Guy, it's disturbing to me.
Yeah, and it's even more disturbing that it's coming from both sides, in this case, both the left and the right. And to your point, yet again, the victims have yet to have an opportunity to voice their concerns. What
exactly.
Would you...
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
You know, one of the things that I'm feeling is that this system is showing the most contempt I've ever seen for the survivors, institutional contempt for survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, and it should make all Americans sick, whether you're Republican or Democrat. This is really a sad day in history that other countries are holding leaders and Epstein perpetrators much more accountable than we are. It's sad, Guy. I mean, it's devastating if you're a survivor, and it's devastating as a country that there's only been 2 indictments. And I know that anger doesn't lead to indictments or handcuffs, but indictments lead to indictments.
Yeah. We know that the committee, they have asked to also speak with President Trump. And I think we can all pretty much agree that that is not going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen. And we're looking here at an administration, which I call the Epstein class administration, because it's billionaires and elites who have a different system of justice than we do. And that system of justice is playing out in front of us, and it's pretty horrifying. The chances of President Trump testifying in front of this committee, I think, are 0 and next to none. But there are still 3.2 million files have not been released in the Epstein case.
And so with that being said, I guess the question is why, Shari? What gives for that not to have happened thus far?
I think, again, it's the Epstein class being protected. I think it's the elites that don't want their names released, that don't want the consequences of being involved with a pedophile sex trafficker. One of the things that's also disturbing is that the victims' names have been unredacted while the perpetrators or accused perpetrators have been redacted. I think it's a massive cover-up, and thankfully across the pond in the UK, they seem to be taking a little bit more action than we are. It's a sad day in America to have this political testimony from targeted people and not have the truth still come up and not have the files released. Just release the files. Win, lose, or draw, let's see the truth.
What would you deem a victory for this committee? What needs to happen in order for that committee to move forward and say, you know what, we did what we were supposed to do?
It's really a good question. I think the first thing that has to happen is the committee has to release the files. They have to lean on the Department of Justice to get all the Epstein files released. Plus, there's been lockers found of Epstein with CDs, VHS, some pornography that have yet to even be looked at. I also feel that in order to have justice, they need to subpoena and allow the survivors to testify. The enablers should be subpoenaed. We have a whole group of people that made this possible. but you have doctors, you have drivers, chefs, every gynecologist, every single person that enabled, saw, and did nothing. And then I think indictments need to be issued. I think the Department of Justice, by the public and by Congress, needs to be pressured with ramifications to start indicting co-conspirators if the statute of limitations and the law allows.
Yeah.
Some of these co-conspirators, the statutes for criminal indictments have already run.
Shari, you have been covering this since the very beginning, and I'm curious, yet again, I want to focus on what really matters in my mind, and that is the victims
Yeah.
and or survivors. Have you had an opportunity to speak with any of them in recent times? And if so,
I have.
what are they saying?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, what are they saying overall?
They're feeling re-traumatized. They're feeling that every time there's hope that the files are going to be released, that they're going to be redacted as to their names and unredacted as the perpetrators, they're let down over and over and over. And the survivors are feeling that they're being re-traumatized without any justice or accountability. In other words, some survivors, myself included, are willing to sustain some re-traumatization if there's an outcome that promises legislation that protects future survivors, extensions of statutes of limitations to hold perpetrators accountable. And some of these perpetrators, all of these perpetrators, we have over 1,000 victims, maybe even 2,000 victims, and we've had 2 indictments. 2 indictments, Guy. That's unacceptable. So this congressional committee has the authority to institute remedies for non-compliance with release of files, with subpoenas. I mean, it's not tasked with political theater. It's tasked with justice.
Yeah.
And survivors are feeling devastated. And they're feeling that they're afraid also because several survivors have ended up committing suicide. And several people have been followed and tracked and monitored and their social media hacked. Survivors are afraid. These are powerful, well-connected billionaires with unlimited resources to silence survivors and protect the Epstein class.
Shari, we'll end with this, and you touched on this earlier, and that is what is taking place over the pond, if you will, with the number of high-profile individuals now, in essence, facing justice, being called to explain as to what relationship, if any, they had with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think that will cause lawmakers here to follow suit? Do you think just that happening, maybe we can finally get to the bottom of this and allow the victims to have justice served?
You know, God, thanks for asking that. My feeling is no, because while other countries, Norway, the UK, have started to hold some of their upfront people clearly associated with Epstein, clearly indicated in the Department of Justice released emails involved, I don't think that it's going to spur America on. And I think it's shameful for us. I feel, as I mentioned earlier, I feel for survivors sick about America's contempt for institutional protection of these survivors. I don't think it's going to help. I am happy it's happening. But where are the indictments? Where are they calling to Congress? For example, Representative Ludnick, he's been, clearly indicated a lot of this. There's about half a dozen of the Trump administration individuals close to the administration already disclosed as possible Epstein links or Epstein perpetrators or involved in Epstein enabling. No justice. Nobody powerful has been called. They're calling ex-presidents. They're calling Secretary of State. Howard Lutnick, that's it. He has not been called. And he lied when he talked about the fact that he had cut off communication with Epstein, only to show years later he took his wife and children to Epstein Island. And he's the Commerce Secretary. And so where is the accountability? And as survivors speak to me, they're feeling both empowered that this is coming to the public eye, which they've been trying to do since the 1990s, late 1990s, and in despair that their hopes of more justice are being taken over by the same people they feel victimized them.
Yeah.
They feel like those people were too powerful, too well connected to hold to account, so they stayed quiet. Now that this is coming to the foreground, it's being proved to them that indeed they should have stayed quiet, or that there's a risk of not staying quiet because nothing's being done. And it's disappointing. I believe in justice. I believe in our judicial system and our three branches of government. I believe. And I'm disappointed daily, and so are survivors.
Hopefully, justice eventually will be served. Yet again, we have
Yes,
been
and thank
speaking
you
with
for
Shari
covering
Karney.
this.
But of course, Shari Karney is
Thank
a
you,
civil
Guy.
rights attorney and nationally recognized legal analyst. We always welcome her right here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Make it a great weekend, Shari. All right, folks,
Thank you, Guy.
we'll
You
take a quick
too.
break. But of course, when we come back on the flip side of that break, we'll be joined by Val Greenberg. We're discussing all things, well, shall I say, fun and so much more. Next, right here on the Live Zone.